So yesterday we started looking at graphs a little bit and what they look like and how you can use graphs to identify information about an exponential function. Today we're going to talk about how to graph an exponential function. So to graph an exponential function, I would make a table of values and then plot the points. That might be the easiest way to do it. You could do it other ways, but that's the way that I tend to have the most success with. That's just kind of the way that my brain works. Otherwise, my brain gets all mixed up and confused about what's happening when things like b values that are less than 1, like down here, or negative a values start happening. I start to get confused, so it's easier just to plot the points. So important features to think about and label is the y-intercept, the value of a horizontal asymptote. All exponential functions have a horizontal asymptote, and this is just the horizontal line that the graph gets closer and closer to forever, but never touches. Unless the function has a vertical shift, which we're going to talk about in Learning Target 4, the horizontal asymptote is always the x-intercept in an exponential function. And then the end behavior, remember, end behavior is just what the ends are doing, how the ends are behaving, where they're going. In an exponential function, one end will always approach the horizontal asymptote, x-intercept or x-axis or a different one. And the other end will always go up or down to either positive or negative infinity. I'm just noticing up here that the horizontal asymptote is always the x-axis, not the x-intercept. There is no x-intercept because it never touches it because it's an asymptote. Now, try graphing each function and identify important features of each graph. So let's try graphing this by making some points to plot. So I'm going to start with -1, 0, 1, 2. And just see where that takes me. I'm going to have some negatives and I'm going to have some positives. To make the table, I'm going to start with my a value, 3. I know that that's my y-intercept, so it's going to go across from my 0 because the y-intercept happens when x is 0. And then my pattern is the b value, that's 2, which means it's timesing by 2. So I'm going to times by 2 going down, so it'd be 6 and then 12 because I'm multiplying by 2 there. And then I also need to go the other direction, and so 1.5 times 2 is what would give me 3. And then I'm just going to plot these points. So I'll make my graph. I'm going to bump it down a little bit so I can get to 12. So -1, 1.5 would be there. 0, 3 would be there. 1, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 2, 12. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 would be there. And so that's what my exponential function would look like. It's going closer and closer to the x-axis on the left side, and it's going up to positive infinity on the right side. Now let's come over here. So I'm going to start now with -3. That's my y-intercept here. And my b value is 2, so when I times that by 2, -3 times 2 gives me -6. And then -12. And going back, it'd be -1.5. So now I'm going to bump my x-axis up because I have a y value of -12, so I want to be able to go all the way down to -12. So as I plot those points, I have -1, -1, -1.5, 0, -3, 1, -6, to negative 12. So that is going to look like that. So what we can see is that when a is negative, it basically just takes your function and flips it over the x-axis. It just makes everything that used to be a positive a negative value. Now let's look down here at this 1/2. So I'm going to do this for my points now. And the reason is because I know that this function is going to be getting smaller and smaller, which means the bigger values are going to be happening in the negatives. So I want more negatives so I can just kind of get a better idea of what's happening. So I'm going to start here. And I'm going to times that by 1/2 now. So it's going to be 1.5 because I times it by 1/2 because that's my b value. Going the other way, if I times 6 by 1/2, it would give me 3. If I times 12 by 1/2, it would give me 6. So if I graph this, now I see I have a y value of 12 because it's x and then y. So I want to get more values on top of my x-axis so I can go all the way up to 12. Negative 2, 12 is my first point. Right there. Negative 1, 6. 0, 3. And 1, 1.5. So now what's happening is because I have a function that has a b value that's in between 0 and 1, I know that that's a decay factor. It's going to be decreasing. And so it's going down, 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 getting closer and closer to the x-axis on this way. Here, I'll make my table. And same thing, because it's decreasing, I know that I'm going to have the y values are going to be bigger, are going to be starting bigger over here in the negatives, so I'm going to have more negatives. And my a value is negative 3. My b value is 1/2, so if I times that by 1.5, or sorry, times that by 1/2, I get negative 1.5. And then going the other way, negative 6 times 1/2 would give me negative 3. Negative 12 times 1/2 would be what would give me negative 6. And so now I can graph this. Then I see that I have a y value of negative 12, so I want to have more room down here in the negatives, so I can graph down to negative 12. So my first point is negative 2, negative 12, so I'm going to go over 2, down 12, and then over 1, down 6, 0, negative 3, and 1, negative 1.5. So again, we see that when the a value is negative, it takes what it used to be and it flips it underneath. So it used to be up here and it just flips it underneath there. Okay, and then if we want to talk about the y-intercepts, notice that the a is 3, so there's a y-intercept of 0, 3, 0, negative 3, 0, 3, and 0, negative 3. So that's how you graph an exponential function. I would make a table, plot the points just based on the starting point and then the pattern, and then go from there. If it's very tricky, like if you have a pattern of a decimal, like if this said like 0.45 or something, it's a little bit trickier to just do the table in your head like that with the pattern. Remember, you can always plug this into your calculator and then push Control-T to look at the table on your calculator and then plot the points from there. That's always another option as well.